changing things up, Lilia is locked in.
And we'll see what that is paired alongside. Normally that signifies potentially some AD solo laners here, the more AD focused composition. But a lot of those big pieces are now off the board. Yone's banned away here in this game. There's no more opportunity for something like a Jace. So get maybe a little bit more creative here for a player like Xiaohu. The Renekton going to be the response here for Bin. They might just want to lock down a very strong, powerful top side to make sure that they are able to dominate through that top side. As we are in game 3 of True Fearless. That means that picks can start to get a little bit different, be a little bit wacky here. As we might get, I think the Nocturne would make more sense here if it's been more meta than something like the Zyra. But if you want to match clear power, you want to match clear speed, could be the name of the game. Instead, we're looking for that hard engage, and now my eyes immediately turn to the Orianna as being a pick that Knight could select here on 3 unless Weibo decided to steal it away.
I would take this one away right now, especially because not only would you have the ball delivery system of the Nocturne, that's always a fun combo, but the Renekton is also a perfectly good one as well, and it just gives you such a powerful set of champions across your top side. You don't have to worry about the Renekton in the laning phase most of the time. You don't have to worry about an Orianna either. Weibo, they're going to recognize that. They're going to pick themselves up the Orianna here. For Xiaohu, he's been perfectly good on this one too, and I wonder what the response is going to be out of BLG. Now, you can either grab yourself a response top laner, something into the Renekton, something like the Gnar is available if you want to play that matchup, a real classic.
I mean, that's been something that Breathe has been able to look really well on kind of throughout his entire career in the LPL. Looks like maybe instead the bot lane will be the focus as Light will get his misfortune. A lot of AoE teamfight ultimates right now. The synergy between the Lilia Sleep and the Bullet Time is very, very strong. And so Weibo right now are really in a good position for a 5v5.
Yeah, but things like the Rel that you usually try to pair up alongside that Misfortune are now gone. A lot of the very aggressive supports are off the board. Oh my! Okay, this is what Depths of Fearless does. We are going to get the Caston locked in. Usually you think about the Orianna as being a very safe matchup. Well, this is something that can actually make it pretty uncomfortable once you get to that level 6. And even beyond that, that's a level of late game scaling and insurance that you can rely upon.
And not even just, you know, being able to punish level 6, you'll also be able to safely kind of scale against something like this Orianna. Yeah. If you are this Kassadin, and once you get to level 16, oh man, Knight's gonna have himself a field day against these pretty much squishy champions that have been set up right now for Weibo Gaming. As we head to the second phase of bans, the Rakan taken away. I would have loved to see on that champion, but unfortunately for Weibo, they're not going to be letting him have that one here. Had good synergy with the Nocturne, and they have to continue to figure out what their bot lane is going to look like now.
Yeah, what can they do to really stop the power here of a Misfortune? I think the Alistar would make plenty of sense. You could also just Zyra Rakan potentially too. That would give you something a little bit safer.
Zyra's banned, the Rakan's banned away, so you can't go for that combo. Instead, it'll be the Jinx. We're fully indexing into the late game here for both of these teams. Bloxer, they don't want to sleep. They want to stay awake as long as possible. They want us to be here in this game for 40 to 50 minutes, it seems. Yeah,
BLG, they are locked in for the long haul, which is interesting, right? Because usually you pick yourself up the Nocturne and think of that as a much more early game focused champion. You can play around the top side right now, see what the response is going to be there. We were talking about the Gnar. That one was taken off of the board, so it is going to be the Cassante, something that's been falling down in priority recently. From an absolute peak of pick ban, constantly such a strong champion, it's still in a perfectly good spot and can be good into things like this Jinx, because you could just chase it around, make it very uncomfortable to play. I would like the Braum here just to take it away from BLG. You really don't want to have to deal with playing into a Braum when bullet time is available. No, instead it's just going to be the Alistar pickup, so a bit of extra tanky front line. Braum makes so much sense here. Poppy, to be fair, also can help against the Cassante and the Alistar, but there's not that many dashes to really be stopping.
If you're picking the Poppy, it's mostly to try to disrupt fights using that Keeper's Verdict. As you say, not a ton of dashes. It's basically an ult bot if you do select it here. It also makes your Jinx maybe a little bit more, you know, potentially in danger in that 2v2. And then once we get later on into these fights. So it's going to be the lock-in here for On, as BLG want to try to disrupt what Weibo are doing. Weibo have a full front-to-back composition. They want to just throw out their ultimates, go for the front-to-back team fight, whereas BLG also want to play to the late game, but they want to try to find picks of their own. Use the Nocturne to single out a single target. Let Elk get a reset. Let Knight take over one of these late game fights. And that's going to all revolve, I think, around this Poppy. If she can use that Keeper's Verdict to knock a couple of key carries away, make it a temporary numbers advantage for BLG, that's where they're going to be able to shine.
Most definitely something they're going to be looking to play around right here. And remember, anytime you've got that Jinx composition, all you need is that first kill, get her excited, and then you can run through the rest of the Rift. I think in this situation, you're going to have to play a little bit more around the early game if you are Weibo. Yes, you've got yourself some decent scaling on side. You would have kind of preferred to have been able to sit pretty, allow your time for Lilia to be able to fully scale up, but at this point, when you're staring down the barrel of a Jinx and a Kassadin, you cannot afford to let this game go super long.
Yeah, gonna be on a timer. However, maybe Weibo are okay with playing these team fights if they can do it right, even if Knight hits level 16, because they have the composition to do it. Again, it's gonna be our last game in the first round robin of Group Ascend of LPL 2025 split number 2. Every single team has played every other team in a best of 3, except for this one, which is about to conclude. 2 teams right in the middle of the standings with a ton of history against each other. Bilibili Gaming and Weibo Gaming in one last matchup before we all do it again, as we prepare to get onto the Rift for our final game of the day.
Let's see it. Let's see it. Such an important matchup, as you're highlighting right here, Graves. So much going to be on this one. And let's see how this game starts out, because Lilia usually wants to sit back and just farm for the first 15 or so minutes, but it's forced out of the jungle. Weibo, let's hit that level 6. What can he do with the paranoia?
See the crowd getting into it too. It's late over there.
Oh, really?
In China right now.
It's managed to become early for you.
I know. I mean, now it's almost the afternoon again, so we're fully looping it back around.
Oh boy, this series has gone incredibly long. We also had a tech pause during series number 1 that also went 3 games. It's been an absolute banger of a day here on the LPL. Long day. And Xiaohu might make it a little bit shorter. Oh, just about doesn't quite get tagged right there. Otherwise, there could have potentially been a little bit of a chase down. Now, the early laning phase in this mid lane should be pretty neutral, pretty even. That's sort of what Orianna is best at, but that's why you pick this matchup, as you were highlighting, right? The Kassadin just wants to get through the early laning phase. You don't have to be worrying about it early on.
As you can see, BLG fully indexing for those late game team fights right now. Knight opting, instead of going for the fleet footwork, to try to keep himself a little bit healthier in lane, for the Conqueror, for what can do with it later on in these games. Well, it's Bin, who has gone for the Conqueror instead of something like that, press the attack. Gives him a little bit more strength in the individual 1v1. So it seems like BLG very well aware that we'll be playing these fights. We'll be playing them late into this game. And they're already indexing themselves to be as powerful as they can to get to that point. And for Weibo, they have to make sure that they try to punish BLG. So maybe going for these more greedy spells, these greedy runes. Otherwise, you know, things could get dangerous. As Knight's already level 2. That's 14 levels away.
Don't worry, guys. We're only 35 minutes away from this champion getting online. Buckle in, strap up. This is likely to be a long one, unless, of course, BLG have anything to say about it. The bot lane is able to survive. Hang on. Oh boy, that's a lot of damage actually going down onto Knight. Manages to get the level up, so that should dissuade any extra play, but still Xiaohu keeps stepping up. The magic damage shield really not even doing enough for him at this point. He's going to be forced back to base already.
Right now for Knight, it's just picking up as much farm, as many minions of experience as you can. Of course, you're going to want to be going for that Rod of Ages. That'll get you an extra level, also continue to help you scale up. But for now, things aren't going to be super easy in the mid lane. See Knight picking up a refillable potion just to make sure he can try to survive. Our junglers pathing on opposite sides of the map. Nobody wants to interact here this game here, Bloxer. Nope. At least to start things off. We might be here for a while before we see any blood being shed. And as I say that, Breathe and Bin going at it just a little bit. But Lilia is here first. Breathe opting to use that Q3 to try to clear out the wave. As Bin wants to try to push this in himself. Pings towards the mid lane here for Tian as he finishes off his clear. Maybe looks for something on tonight. We'll see, does connect, the dissonance does as well. Knight might burn that flash, otherwise he could be in trouble. But gets just burned out at 200 HP, doesn't have teleport to get back either.
Oh, hang on. Wei went for a little bit of a deep play right here. Tian, there's no reason to suspect that he's in there. Now potentially going to play around these chickens, but of course you're going to have a much faster move over from Xiaohu if this play actually ends up starting. You can see though On has been called on over.
Oh, but On trying to get here first. It's going to be Tian to steal away that raptor, and he has to flash over the wall into his red buff pit to make sure that he survives.
A little bit of aggression, but still nobody going to go down right now. This game far more about waiting at least until the level 6. That's the point at which the Lilting Lullaby and that Paranoia are going to be up and available. Very powerful abilities. Specifically, I'm going to be watching Wei, right? Wei has been under a lot of criticism recently. There's rumors swirling that maybe he even gets replaced. People thinking he's the problem with BLG at the moment. And right here in this game, he's being given the bridge champion that attempts to get BLG from an early game that most of their champs are not very good at into the mid to late game where these item power spikes can really begin to come through. Those level power spikes can come through for Knight as well. And this is a lot of pressure to be putting on a player who hasn't necessarily been performing so far. The Nocturnes also not necessarily look like one of his best picks, but at this point in the best of 3, Hard Fearless kind of running out of champions. So what can he do on this champion? Specifically, once we see that level 6 ticked, can Wei make good use of that first Paranoia? It's a long cooldown on it during that level 1, and so whiffing on it, not at least getting a flash, if not a kill, is a real devastating blow to your team.
It'll be important to see where he decides to use it, where those resources are going to be allocated, because there's a lot of mouths to feed, low-key, on this BLG composition. You have Knight, who wants to get a lot of experience, a lot of minions. You have Elk on this Jinx, who, if he's not at full 2-3 items, all of a sudden the composition becomes a lot worse for BLG as well. So, you know, the team fighting will be good, but it takes some time to get there. As right now we're already seeing some maneuvering here with the BLG composition to try to make sure all of their players get as many resources as they possibly can. They send Knight to the bottom lane. They allow for Wei to start up these grubs because Bin has priority in the K'Sante-Renekton matchup. And now BLG's bot lane headed back towards their respective home lane. Just try to check out what Erha and Light could be doing.
See if there could potentially be any sort of play down in this bottom side. BLG have absolutely loved a bot lane dive. Right now, though, it's Weibo stepping up quite far. He's going to spot out the fact that On was just waiting out in the wings at the moment. See if the Drake's going to be started up right here by Tian. It is indeed. And with the push going on in the bottom lane, with the neutral lane state mid, it should be relatively easy to pick this one up. Wei, still level 5. We haven't had those level 6s ticked through for the junglers quite yet. So we're still waiting on those very powerful pools to be able to come through.
Should be this first dragon picked up basically for no problem. Again, it was traded by those first 3 grubs over on BLG's side. I feel like overall, if you are BLG, you might prefer the dragons just a little bit, but getting those 3 grubs means that Weibo is in no danger of like seriously blowing open your base as soon as you lose one singular fight. We do see Knight finally unlocking the Rift Walk as he starts to stack up that tier. Going to be a slow stacking game though, and already he's pretty far behind in terms of CS compared to what Xiaohu's been able to do on this Orianna. Kind of by himself right now at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Things have been a little bit rough so far, but this is kind of what you expect. A lot of poke coming through. Yeah, and having his red buff stolen away. There's the engage.
Already going for the engage. Nice pulverize. Pushed out by Erha to make sure that that fear doesn't connect. Still some damage to be done. Xiaohu on the way. Slilting Lullaby only on to the Kassadin. And the Super Mega Death Rock lands onto Light. Here comes Xiaohu looking for potentially a shockwave. It finds 2, and he goes right into Knight's flash. And first blood is picked up by Weibo Gaming. They get a second one with Knight dropping as well. And On's on the run on the wrong side of the map. There's no chance of him escaping this one as the aggression from BLG proves disastrous off of the invade. Xiaohu will finish off this kill and make it 3-0 Weibo.
This one's going to be picked up relatively easily right there by Xiaohu. They managed to get themselves the Feats of Warfare in one swift play. The Drake was also picked up just before it ended up happening. Just over-aggression right there out of BLG. They thought that they could go straight in onto Tian because they had the Paranoia up and available. And this is what we were tracking, right? How does that first Paranoia work out? I said you need to get at least a flash out of your opponent. Well, flashes were blown, but giving 3 kills over, no good. And it's just this time, you don't actually get really any damage here onto Tian. It's Erha who takes the majority, and yeah, you are an Alistar without an ulti at this point, so it's not the end of the world, but Xiaohu just kind of moves over at this point, and it's here, right here, flash, forwards, repositions, boom. Gonna be able to pull through with that shockwave, and at that point forwards, it's just a slow, sad death here for On. 3 kills over to Weibo on a composition that they had to get rolling in the early game.
And here they go, up 3-0. How far can they take this advantage? As now Xiaohu very far ahead of Knight at this point, almost a full level. Of course, getting towards the 25 mark in terms of CS that he's in advantage of as well. About 1,000 goals in total that Weibo have in control over BLG. The one area of the map right now where BLG has control is where they did not make a play, and that's up the top side of the map, where Bin has about a 10 CS advantage over Breathe, but Breathe is itemizing efficiently right now against this Renekton lane. A full Thornmail to start things off to make sure he's in no danger of going down.
Hey, it's also going to be very helpful against this Nocturne early on, and potentially against Elk in the later stages of the game as well, if we end up with a Bloodthirster or something similar going down onto this Jinx. I think it's a very good buy, and yeah, very much stops a lot of the power that the Renekton would be looking towards early on. We are seeing the majority of the first items coming through right here for Weibo, because they've got themselves about 1,000 gold lead at the moment. It's just going to be the bullet time used by Light to be able to pick up a couple of minions, do a little bit of damage to On and Elk, and that could potentially dissuade any BLG dive. They love a dive bot lane, they do it all the time. Right now, I'd be very surprised to see this happen. Instead, I think we're just going to have to recall out of this position and head back towards the top side. They did get the first 3 grubs, so it's not the end of the world to lose the next 3 over to Weibo. Getting 5, 6, that would have been really helpful.
Would have definitely been.
As
Now
he's
can we look
staying?
for another play on this bottom side? As Light is here, doesn't have that flash, and Wei will show himself to make sure that he's going to be able to try to feed as many of these plays over to Elk as he possibly can. Getting these resources into the big carries is going to be important. And it looks like just another plate or 2 handed on over to the Jinx. The response, though, 3 grubs back over towards Tian. And now Xiaohu is here to try to make a play down bot.
He was spotted, walked straight over a ward, now knows that when he comes face to face with a control ward, so it's just going to be a little bit of pressure, a bit of pushback, and importantly Tian was able to catch the wave mid lane, so Knight wasn't able to push that one over. The XP wasn't wasted. Now Tian wanders over to Knight, gonna have to just get himself away right there. Big damage onto On at the moment, and Elk, both of them falling pretty low.
So it looks like the rest of BLG going to back away. Thankfully, none of them losing their lives. This proceeded, lands on a 2.
Sleep.
Oh, the Lilting Lullaby is going to come out. Oh, what a huge Keeper's Burden from On. It might save Elk's life.
The burn?
Continues to burn down, and Faded Ashes plus the Leandries will have her 4th kill to go over towards Tian, but it could have been a lot worse.
It could most definitely have. Very much was a needed Keeper's Verdict to be able to bop people away right there. Still, landing that Swell Seed onto a couple members, getting that Lilting Lullaby off, it's going to open up this Drake right here for Weibo. Once again, they've got themselves a good early game. In game number 1, they were able to convert that into a win. Game 2, things stalled out, and they threw the game away. In this game, when you've got a Kassadin and a Jinx on the other side, you cannot afford to let things stall out Weibo. They're going to have to keep the tempo high.
That's the objective feats and the feats of warfare over towards Weibo. Their early game going as per planned. As you can see, just a beautiful Swirl Seed from Tian.
Yeah. Forces the flash as well right there out of Elk, and that's going to be incredibly impactful later on. This is a very squishy, very immobile Jinx right here, with a couple of different champions that can attempt to get into the backline. No full backline dive, not like BLG have with the Nocturne. Still, you don't want to be flashless as a Jinx in this situation.
In the mid jungle right now for Weibo, really turning up. It's Tian and Xiaohu, these players with such high levels of experience, maybe the most experience out of anybody on this Weibo team. The world champion and MSI champion mixed in. And for Weibo, they're going to have to do some of the heavy lifting here before BLG's composition fully comes online, or if it ever does at this point. Yeah. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be a little bit of a mountain to climb here for BLG. Knight has not gone after the start that he wanted. He's down a little bit in CS. He just picks up his Rod of Ages. It's going to be a while until he becomes a real threat.
Oh yeah, you are very much waiting. I like the look of Xiaohu picking up the Saras first as well. Sort of composition where you really need a little bit of extra survivability right here if Wei ever decides to go all in straight onto this Orianna. Maybe there's a chance you're going to be able to survive that one long enough to at least return the kill, if not live through the assault. And now 14 or so minutes into this game. Erha might be caught here. He's pretty deep and kind of have been abandoned by the rest of his friends.
He does have the unbreakable will to try to keep himself alive, but On is on the flank, should be able to use the heroic charge backwards. Oh, what a flash from Era to get himself on out of there. And now Wei's going forward with the paranoia. That was just ill-advised as Wei gets nothing off of that play. As Era saves himself really well using that summoner spell.
Yeah, just one flash, although you don't want to lose out onto the flash right here. As the Alistair, that's a big engage tool missing, still wasting away another paranoia. That's now 2 paranoias in a row where Wei hasn't really been able to get too much from it. He's got the Hex Plate, so he's going to have the ulti up relatively often. That's why you go towards this little bit of extra survivability as well for him once he gets into the backline. Still not going to be ideal overall. Tian going to go for a little bit of an invade right here. Finds the red buff, but he needs to be careful. On is behind him. Anti-P.
Here by Wei. He's 2 levels down, but that doesn't matter just yet. Shockwave is spell shielded away from it. The Lilling Lullaby will come out in response. 4 members of Weibo are here, but here comes Bin. He pops the Dominus and is going to try to look for a play, but Weibo's out way too quickly there. And even though they don't burn any kills, they get a lot of resources in response.
Oh boy, I mean, the fact that also Xiaohu is able to pick himself up the final auto attack onto the red buff to grab it. That's now an Orianna with double buffs. Going to be very happy about that one. And I can't believe that you get away with that as Tian. He looked like he should have been dead to rights there.
Somehow, he's just so far ahead of Wei at this point. A 40 CS gap nearly has opened up. He's 1,500 gold ahead of the Nocturne. So Tian on this Lilia, able to do a lot in terms of generating resources for herself, picking up farm wherever she can. This is not necessarily the Tian that we have grown to love and enjoy, right? A lot of the time, you think of Tian as somebody on the Lee Sin, making plays for his team, kind of disposing his income in favor of trying to help out the rest of his squad. But now, having the resources in his hands, he'll have to do a lot in terms of being a big carry for his team in this decisive game of the series.
Absolutely. You see multiple members right here of Weibo hovering around this top side of the map. They're going to start up the Rift Herald. Is there going to be any response right now? Wei is down on the bottom side, but does have the Paranoia up and available if he wants to rejoin his team pretty quickly. Right now, though, it looks like there won't be any real response, and the push isn't even really happening down towards the bottom side of the map. It'll be a nice, easy pickup right here of the Herald for Weibo, and they can use this one to crack open the mid lane, really open up the rest of the map, because although the bot lane tower was taken down, the rest of these towers looking pretty healthy at the moment for BLG.
So how are we feeling about BLG's chances right now, Bloxer? Remember, they struggled so mightily in game number 2 as well, through the first 25 to 30 minutes. But BLG, they still have the scaling comp, they still have the Jinx. However, right now Elk's only at like 1 item and change. Knight still has a long time until he gets that rod stacked as well.
Absolutely. You're going to have to be waiting a long time for this composition to really come online right here for BLG. The Untel arrows picked up for Elk means that he's on his way to this heavy crit build, but really is still going to be quite a ways away from picking that one up. 3, if not 4 items are really needed. The level 16 for Knight and the items to be doing the damage. And so far, Wei has not been able to use this Paranoia effectively to help BLG transition from this weak early game into a much stronger mid to late.
Problem is, though, Weibo's late game, not bad at all. You got an Orianna, you got a Lilia, you got a Misfortune, even a Cassante. Can do some Cassante things here for Bree. Doesn't necessarily need the income like a Renekton does, so
the whole composition works well. Yeah, exactly. The whole composition here for Weibo works well in the later stages of the game, whereas for BLG, you've got a couple champions that are amazing late on, and then champions like the Nocturne and in part like the Renekton who kind of fall off.
So it's just parts of BLG's comp that scale really well. As we're 5 minutes away from that upgraded Roa, Knight at level 11. We're just counting down the levels until when that 16 becomes unlocked. Even at 11, it's a decent power spike right now. The Dragon's going to be taken here by Weibo. That is Soul Point, Mountain Soul Point at that for them. And so that will be another thing that maybe BLG are going to have to fight for if they want to try to keep themselves in this game.
Exactly. We saw in the previous game how the Drakes being taken super slowly stalled the game out long enough for BLG to be able to get themselves back into this one. Weibo have clearly learned from that mistake and are taking these Drakes as quickly as possible. We're going to get them with a potential option to find Soul in just 5 minutes time. Very early on in the game for that to be happening. We're going to have Atakan spawning in 1 minute. Still a little way away from the Baron being available. Now, Baron is just going to melt to both of these teams once they start it up, so you're going to have to be very careful when that one's available as to where you're sending your junglers. Yes, you've got some good movement ability from Wei to get himself over to objectives quickly, but you still don't want to put yourself into a bad situation here.
Right now, BLG still looking for their first kill. This could be it here as an ultimate comes down from Wei, forcing a flash from the Orianna. Xiaohu gonna use the shockwave in response, though, and almost trying to take down Wei. The Mikhail's gonna save Wei's life, but that was oh so close. Response is a bot lane tower tier 1 taken, but now it is Elk in a lot of trouble here. The Swirl Sea's dodged away from, but this Jinx sure to not live for very much longer unless he gets some support. Bin comes in with a teleport, and Elk will live, as we still have not found a kill for BLG.
No, that's now 0 for 3 when it comes to paranoias. This is exactly what we wanted to not have happen. The level 11 has now been ticked for Knight and Wei. And this is what happened mid lane. Decent damage coming through, straight up in the 1v1 between Light and Elk. I think Elk's been overall the slightly more impressive of the ADCs that we've had today.
We get a brief pause on our feed. We're hoping that we're able to get that resolved as soon as possible. I think we're back. All
there
good.
Hello.
Thankfully, we didn't miss too much, I believe, as the Otacon now is available, as you said, on the bottom side of the map. That dragon spawning in 3 minutes. Again, we're just a community broadcast, guys. Some things out of our control a little bit here. What is not in our control as well, and what's not in BLG's control, is the fact that they're down about 2,000 gold, and they still have this mid jungle of Tian and Xiaohu that are doing very well for themselves, and now Light's starting to come online as well.
Exactly, they've put themselves in a very good spot, have Weibo throughout the early stages of this game. 2 minutes and a half until the next dragon is going to be available, but Atakan also down in the bottom side at the moment. They can try to heavily play around this Atakan if you really want to, but I think actually this is one of the situations for Weibo where I'm happy for them to stall things out a little bit more. They want to be playing about this Drake most specifically, and having both in the same area bot lane makes a one fight down there incredibly juicy.
Have to be very careful, specifically if you're BLG. As now Elk getting targeted here in the mid lane once again with that bullet time. And that's going to probably allow for that tower in the mid lane to go down. That brings open the map a little bit as Knight was caught the ward. Didn't realize he was spotted there by Tian and the rest of Weibo Gaming, as they'll be able to path straight back up to this top side and add even more to their gold lead with this top tier 1 going down.
And these mid lane and top lane tier 1 towers going down before the Baron comes up is incredibly important. It allows you so much extra space to be able to push forwards, put your wards in, make sure you don't get caught out on a flank. For the minute, there's really no potential aggression going on down in the bottom side. Nobody's really indexing around this Atakan whatsoever, but a minute now until the next Drake is going to spawn. Soul, if you pick it up for Weibo, and Mountain Soul as well, making it that much harder to be able to get through these main carries right here. Xiaohu and Light having a little bit of extra shield is going to be incredibly helpful in this game, and to be honest, it will make Breathe and Erha almost unkillable once they're in and amongst these big team fights, ultis running everything up.
Problem is, Bloxer, I just don't know if BLG are there yet. I don't know if they're in a spot where they can fight for this soul without just getting obliterated by the wallets of Weibo. There's not even 2 items on Elk at this point.
No.
And Knight has just about to hit his stacking on the Rod of Ages. It's going to be really tough to play this out. Elk finally picks up a Lord Doms. The question is that going to be enough? And will the late game scaling have arrived at 23 minutes when Weibo are going to be playing for a potential game-changing Mountain Soul?
Yeah, this is the thing, right? You've fallen behind, and your enemy's composition spikes much harder right here at 2 items. This is the point at which we're going to have a ton of power for the Orianna, and most specifically right here, a ton of power onto this Misfortune. I've not been a big fan of the Misfortune for a while, but in this game, Light has been playing incredibly well so far. A bit of a flank coming through from Bin. This is one way to turn it around.
Being very patient. He's very far away. Knight on the other side of the map is going to pick up this tower and then likely teleport to try and join a fight. As Weibo are starting up this dragon again. It'll be Mountain Soul if they can pick it up. Keeper's Verdict is being issued by On. They're going to try and maybe cancel somebody here, but it ends up not going fully through. Dragon's at half HP. Again, Weibo desperately want this Mountain Soul early. Dominus already be popped by Bin. Things have to go quickly now. The Paranoia has already been used by Wei. And so right now that means that Weibo can maybe stall this one out a little bit more. Keep Inverted comes down.
Oh no!
The jungler away, and that means that BLG might be able to take this one away. It's Knight that steals the dragon, but everybody on his team has fallen by the wayside. It's already 2 kills in favor of Weibo Gaming, and Tian gonna try to chase Knight down. Use the Rift Walk to try to escape, but he is caught between a ton of members of Weibo, and Elk and Bin have no reason to try to keep him alive. Knight finally will be able to escape, but it comes at the cost of 2 lives for Weibo Gaming, and they're gonna get the Otacon as well.
Or potentially get the Atacant as well. Bin is in the area, could potentially try to step forwards and dissuade this play from coming through. There's no real teleports around either. No, is just going to have to back off. So you pick up the Drake, and that's the main thing right here. You extend this game for at least another 5 minutes whilst we wait for the next Drake to spawn. The fact that it was picked up right there by Knight. Wei wasn't even able to snipe that one away. What a carry performance right there. That keeper's verdict was critical to be able to slow this game down. You can watch it right here. Bops
right
away the Lilia. And you can see the moment that that happens, everybody from BLG just goes leaping in. It's so close to still being picked up, especially because Light's just bullet time straight across it. The fact that Knight is then also able to use all of these Rift Walks to get himself away is huge.
The gold lead still slowly growing here for Weibo, approaching 3,500, 4,000, but on the other side for BLG, they're starting to get more and more of those items. 2.5 now on Elk and on Bin, but they still have not found a kill, which is the craziest part of this all. We're holding out so much hope for BLG to win a fight, and they still have not gotten a single kill in this one, and they're not going to get it for much longer as well, as Weibo have the Otacon buff for another 90 seconds.
Yep.
That means that they can go right to this Baron, set up major control of it, and even if they lose out on a fight, as long as they get a couple back, it's still going to be worth it for them because they have these revives in hand.
Absolutely, it's very much going to be on Weibo to push the advantage that they have early on and make sure that they don't allow BLG away to get back into this game. This is about as good as they could have really hoped for. 4,000 gold in the advantage at the moment, but it really does suck for them that they weren't able to pick themselves up this fourth Drake. Put them in a really good spot. Things slowing down a little bit, and it worries me, right, things are slowing down a little bit, because this is what we saw in the previous game, right? Weibo get themselves a big advantage, and then just sort of stall out the game. They need to keep their foot down. They cannot afford to let BLG claw their way back.
That is true. That's what we said in game number 2. We thought a game like that would have been wrapped at this point. However, things are a little bit different now, most notably because BLG were able to come back in game number 2, and also look at the champions. One more level on Elk until he hits 16. But he's not going to have it here for a potential fight around this Baron, which has been started up here by Weibo and already at half HP. Wei going to have to paranoia into the pit, but Erha is looking here on a flank, looking to try to disrupt all of BLG from going in. Weibo have pulled away from the Baron and are now looking for the fight. Nice flash away from Elk to get away from the shockwave. And now BLG will be able to keep themselves alive for now. Slice and dice out for Bin. Lilting Lullaby not issued just yet as Tian continues to be on the chase. He flashes into the bot lane. Going to be cleansed away from here by Elk and on. And nobody has died just yet for BLG. They have done a tremendous job in keeping themselves all up.
Still, though, you get to pull away, potentially go play around this Baron once again, and a couple of the key abilities were used. Specifically, Elk's Flash is now going to be down for the next 4 minutes. This is a huge thing to be missing out on for BLG. Still, they survive to fight another day. Weibo having this game stalled out, this worries me. It's definitely got shades of game number 2.
Just keep farming those waves, Knight. He's like 2 or 3 waves away from that rank 3 ulti, from that rank 3 Rift Walk, where things become very dangerous for anybody playing against a Cassidy, no matter how many kills or lack thereof that he does have. And until then, still looking pretty scary. Gold lead back to 4,500 here now for Weibo.
Yeah, indeed. Just not extending the gold lead is the problem, right? Yes, you get yourself out to this good advantage, but haven't really been able to turn it into anything too much more. Oh, he desperately needs to get one more wave right here. But remember, 30 seconds now until the next Drake is going to be spawning.
He's going to pick it up and then teleport. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
He's going to grab the wave and then TP right to this dragon because he needs to be there for it. He's going to wait for Greed to crash one in. And now Knight. He's got to pick this up. Can he get level 16?
He should do.
There he is.
There it is.
Okay.
Okay.
BLG are now online. Level 16 here for Knight. He's teleporting. He's going to recall and then teleport over to this dragon. It will be Mountain Soul for Weibo if they can pick it up. BLG need to prevent that from happening. Components of the Zhonya's, but not fully completed right now, is Knight as he heads into the pit to try to make it a 5v5 around the dragon pit. Oh, things are so tense.
This is just
the
gonna
series
burn.
on the line right now. The vision just not on Weibo's side. Are they just going to give this away? Paranoia comes out. Wade's going to have to get in there somehow, some way. Who's going to get in? It's the by Weibo Gaming. The Keeper's Verdict came out just a little bit too late, but the bullet time is not going to do enough. The kill is on to Light, and now BLG going to try to win this one despite the soul going over. Elk's excited. Elk's online. Elk trying to win this one. Bin flashing over. Finds the stun of the Xiaohu. Elk gets another reset here as finally BLG are on the board, but they're looking a little
the TP.
A teleport's coming in, and Tian is taking over this team fight. Is just too damn big on the deer. Trying to chase down Knight as the last remaining survivor on BLG. But Weibo Gaming, we're held strong, and they pick up 4 kills in the soul.
That's one fast Bambi right there. Tian just zooming his way through that team fight. An absolute mess of a fight. To be honest, one of the best looking fights BLG are going to find themselves all game long. Elk was free hitting, got excited, but it just was not enough right there. And now you're going to be able to pull around onto the Baron here as Weibo. Knight is still up and available. 15 seconds until Wei is back up. But without a Paranoia, he won't be able to get into this pit. And it is just going to be Baron picked up right here for Weibo. They pulled this game through. It looked a little bit iffy for a couple of seconds, especially once the level 16 was hit there. Knight not quite able to do what he needed to. The fact that the Drake is picked up right here by the Orianna, who then gets bopped straight out of the pit. And what a complete mess this is. Watch Elk in this team fight, right? He's free hitting, he's free hitting, he's free hitting. He's still getting free hits down, but just isn't quite able to do enough damage. And it's at this point where Bin goes and jumps over the wall, where things get way too split out. Now Tian is allowed to get involved in this game and does so much damage right here on this Lilia.
Yeah, Tian, the MVP of that team fight right there. Even though he didn't land that smite, you can see he did the most damage on his team. And Elk Tian really damn close on the other side, Bloxer, but it was not enough. As Weibo were also able to pick up the Baron after winning that team fight. They have the Mountain Soul. Will it be enough to stop this late game composition of BLG with a 7,000 gold deficit? It should be, in every stretch of the imagination. But we never know. We saw what happened in that last game, and it still ended up with BLG on top. Knight finally with that finished Zhonya's Hourglass. We're getting the 3 full items on all the main carries here for BLG. Weibo Gaming, they need to find the breaking open of one part of this base on one side of the map. It's going to be the top lane tier 2, focused up first.
Look at the build right here out of Wei. Hexplate into GA. He does no damage. I mean, negative damage at this point. He's probably going to be healing Light or Xiaohu when he hits them. He is just a light switch at this point in the game.
We're going for a mega flank right now. As a
He's not even going to find it, though.
They're going to be so far away. This fight's going to take so long to try to break out. They ult away the Alistar, and here comes the Paranoia, but nobody's going down. Light just keeps himself alive the entire goddamn time. 4 for nothing. Elk will drop. It's a clean ace in a 4v5 situation for Weibo Gaming, as they will end their first round robin with an absolute exclamation point. A 15-2 dominant Game 3 victory over Bilibili to end their first round robin at 5-4.
It takes them 3 games, but Weibo gonna come out on top right here. It ends at midnight over in China. What a long day, what a long series we've had. But congratulations right here to Weibo. First round robin completed, like you said, exclamation point on it, picking up this victory up against BLG, and BLG who are struggling, who are floundering with a jungler who just can't make it work right now. Weibo, they make no sense. They beat bad teams, they beat good teams, they lose to bad teams, they lose to good teams, but right here, they take out a BLG we also can't get a read on. Look at them, they're so happy, they're smiling. What a good way to end things off for themselves, but remember, you still have 9 more best of 3s to play going forwards.
Weibo was in 8th place just a couple of weeks ago in the season.
Yeah.
Now they have full possession of 4th. I believe they're right in the mix right there with either JDG or IG at 5 and 4. Things are starting to turn upwards for Weibo. It hasn't been fully consistent. Obviously, they've dropped series here or there that they might not have wanted to. But at the end of the day, you're much happier with how Weibo look right now after this victory over BLG than you looked just a couple of weeks ago. Era coming in, being such a big boon for this squad. Even though he wasn't necessarily involved in that final team fight, he was involved in so many of the other processes that got them to that point in the series. And if you're BLG, where do you turn from here, man? 4 and 5, dropping back-to-back series in back-to-back days. You could almost call that a 3-0 in favor of Weibo with how that second game ended up unfolding. Things have not looked good for this team at all.
No, I'd like to quickly go through all of BLG's matches in the first round robin to just highlight how whack it has been. They 2-0 Thundertalk, fine. They 2-0 IG. Then they lose 2-1 to AL, lose 2-0 to JDG, beat WE, lose to TES, beat NIP, and then they've now lost to FPX and Weibo in a row. That is a wild way to have played. The fact they beat IG, crazy, but then beyond that, they haven't actually beat any of our top teams, and they are in a pack of a lot of different teams who look hungrier than them and who look better than them at the moment. Yes, JDG and IG are technically above them in the standings right now, and I think do look overall like better teams, but even them are not particularly safe at the moment, not when you've got teams right now on monumental rises like Weibo, FPX, and WE.
And things are only going to get better, specifically for those teams from the bottom half of things, FPX and WE. They didn't have a ton of expectations coming in, but they seem to continue to be scaling at a relatively consistent pace. And for FPX specifically, beating BLG is a perfect way for them to cap off their first half of the season. But now BLG falls to a losing record, actually in a straight-up tie with FPX in terms of match record in the standings, which is unbelievable to even consider, to even fathom, considering where we were in terms of our expectations going into the start of split number 2.
Crazy, crazy plays. Top, they look like they've got themselves into a good spot in the league at the moment. 8-1, AL 7-2, and then everybody else. It's just such a crush in the middle of the standings at the moment. For Weibo, massive congratulations to them for this victory and for the way that they've been able to turn around their split so far. They were looking incredibly bad, and they very much are looking like another one of those teams who are on big rises at the moment. FPX have just won themselves a ton of games. WE have just won 3 in a row after being in a terrible spot, 0-6 for a little while. So this is some big changes that we've been seeing from a lot of these different teams, and if you are one of these teams, JDG, IG, or BLG, you got to be looking at those squads and thinking, hey, we need to clean things up right now, or we're at a massive risk of not being able to face up against one of those bad teams from the group Nirvana, or even getting yourself into the top 4. This gold graph, they just got destroyed. They got destroyed the entire way through. Elk did basically no damage. Knight did even less. Doing 6,000 damage in a game is just criminal, but that's the thing right here with the casting. If you don't get into the late game, what happens?
That team comp was the Justin Herbert of team comps. A lot of ifs involved. If things went this way, if things went that way.
The what if comp.
It didn't end up getting there though. Even when some of those power spikes were hit, it was all too late.